Welcome back to Just Breathe. I am so happy you all are here today, and I'm really, really thrilled for you to be part of this conversation that I get to have with this wonderful person that I just met or was introduced to by a mutual friend. And we have just found that we have so many things in common and have had such a fun time connecting and sharing. And so I'm really, really thrilled for you to meet Aransas today and get to know more about the beautiful things that she is doing in the world. So we're just going to jump right in, and I want to talk first and learn more about, you have this amazing podcast, The Uplifters, which I get to be a guest on, and I'm so, so honored that you asked. But I wonder if you could share a little more about the podcast in and of itself, but kind of in the greater sense, the why. Why did you start this, and what are you wanting this to create in the world?
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a joy to connect with inspiring women who are led by purpose like you. And to get to spend this time with you is just such a joy on every level. And I guess that's really the whole answer to why I created the Uplifters. So the Uplifters podcast is designed to support and celebrate women of purpose. So when I say that, I'm talking about women from all walks of life who are living with bravery and who are really on a mission to make a positive impact with their lives. And so I get to talk to women who are trailblazers, who are perhaps the first to ever have done what they've done, to everyday women who, in their little communities, they are creating ripples of impact. And I just deeply believe that women especially have the power to change the world. And there's incredible research that shows that the people we spend the most time with have a direct correlation of our own experience. And I think that's especially true for the courage with which we live. And so I've spent my life kind of on a mission to surround myself with really inspiring, courageous women, believing that I'm going to be better because the people I'm with make me better. But I also found that I was curious about the women who were inspiring the women who inspired me. And so I created the Uplifters podcast as a chain of inspiration. And so each guest recommends a woman who inspires her. And then I get to talk to them and learn from them and share them with all the other uplifters. And we've just formed this incredible community of women who are so diverse and so unique. And yet we share common values. And I mean, on the surface, you think, how could these women have anything in common? And yet, as you hear our stories, you find that these are women who find value and strength and community, who care about leaving a positive impact, who care about their own personal growth, who care about learning. And we lift each other up. And it's that old saying, all tides rise together.
Right.
And so we are really collectively forming a tidal wave that is having huge impact on stages that are both massive and very, very tiny and intimate.
Wow, I love that. It is one of the most beautiful, I get the privilege of talking to a lot of people, and I just think it is such a lovely, selfless act for you to see this as something that is important, that was important and needed in the world, and to create this wonderful movement. So I really appreciate that. I wonder if you could share, because you get to talk to so many beautiful people, a couple of the most interesting or the most inspiring stories of where they get their courage, where they get their that bravery to use their voice or to act on what their purpose is.
Yeah. I mean, the stories are what keep me going too. And one of the most moving to me is a woman named Helen Arteaga Landaverde. And she came to this country from Ecuador as a young girl with her parents, who were both activists and really mission-driven folks. And they moved here with big dreams and a big desire to have positive impact. And yet there was a lot they didn't know about this country and the way it operated. And so Helen's father, unfortunately, got cancer early on in their time in America. And the public services available to them without insurance, without good medical care, were really limited. And unfortunately, he died at NYC Health and Hospital's 𝗛𝗲𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗿. So throughout his life, however short, he managed to impart to his daughter that you can't change the world, but you can change your block. And Helen really took this to heart. And so she decided after her father passed and she got through high school, she went to college and she said, you know what, I'm going to get a degree in public policy and I'm going to learn how to help folks with healthcare. And while there, she came to understand that she could have a more immediate impact by starting a health center that directly targeted first-generation Americans who are non-English speaking in a neighborhood in Queens called 𝗛𝗲𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗿, which is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in America. And she, through her advocacy there, actively and directly, they changed the health trajectory and lifetime expectancies in that neighborhood.
Oh.
Then the pandemic came along, and I'm sorry, it's a bit of a long story, but it's just too good not to share.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, Helen decided to stay open. And, you know, the pandemic was a very different thing for us in New York than it was for a lot of places. It was not the flu early on.
It was
we ran past every morning lines and lines of freezer trucks because there were too many bodies to house in site spaces. And it was a crisis in every sense of the word. And people were dying by the minute because we didn't know how to treat this disease. But Helen and her team decided to keep their doors open at their little clinic to serve this community because they had to. And of course, Helen got COVID. And it was still in the early days before they understood anything about treatment, where it was very likely that she would die. She had to be admitted to NYC Health and Hospital's 𝗛𝗲𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗿, where her father died. And the people there treated her with extraordinary care and diligence and saved her life. And then a few months later, they went on a search for a new CEO. And unsurprisingly, because of her track record, Helen was hired. And so she is now the first female, the first Latin American to lead a hospital in NYC, one of the NYC Health and Hospitals. And she is now having extraordinary impact as a result of that work, and is been named the best health NYC Health and Hospitals. And so I talk about Helen's story because to me it is a story of a woman on a mission, being responsive to the needs of the people around her. And I hear that so often from these stories, these women who see a need and they don't walk in with an answer. They walk in with an intention. Right. Which is to respond to the needs in whatever ways are most helpful. And so if you look at the stories we've collected, and there are now about 100 of them available, you will see in those story after story of women who didn't say, I'm going to solve the problem my way. I'm going to fix things. But rather they said, I'm going to listen and respond, and I'm going to do what needs to be done for the sake of the people that I care about. And again, that's a community as small as one family, all the way to millions of people like Helen.
Oh, that is amazing. And I think what I love about that, and I think what is definitely woven through probably most of these stories, is that there was never a moment of, and Helen's case specifically, but I think through a lot of these stories of thinking, oh gosh, I'm scared, or I can't, or this is too hard, or there, like anything that was like self-focused. It was all like, I see something that needs to be done, that needs attention, that needs something, right? And I am going to go.
I thought that too, Heather. But this is what's been really reassuring about this. And I will say, with the exception of the trailblazers, who are truly like one of the first women I interviewed was the first female, first openly gay, first Black woman to be a pilot at a U.S. commercial airline. Another was the first female to play professional basketball in Canada. Those women are really wired differently. They really, I'm fascinated. Catherine Switzer, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon with a bib. They are uniquely wired. And I think they are aligned with what you're saying, that they are so focused on the goal that fear just doesn't seem to really enter their scope. The other 97 women, though, did it with fear. They did it with doubt. They did it with worry, and including Helen. She has the same fears you and I do, of not enoughness, of being judged, of being seen as not ready or capable or smart enough or well resourced. And that to me is so reassuring.
It is. Well, it is, because it says, you can do this. Like, just keep going. Keep going. Like, and almost, on those days when that fear is really loud, when the doubt is right in your face, keep going.
Keep going. Yeah. I'm reading the book 𝗲𝗁𝘁𝗵𝗏 right now by 𝗛𝗲𝘁𝗵𝗏. And it's so good. If you don't know her, she's an Olympic runner who overcame severe depression right after her Olympic turn. And she's a filmmaker, designer. Just really a remarkable young woman. And she talks a lot about the distinction between being merely interested in dreams and being committed to dreams. And so the committed person, when things get hard, and they will,
yes,
the committed person keeps showing up. But the difference really is the interested person gets overwhelmed by the fear and lets that take lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That is such a great way of stating that. Mm-hmm. Yes, because the fear it can freeze, or it can inspire.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It can stop us or it can energize us.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this, speaking of which, all of these beautiful people that you've had the opportunity to speak with has inspired you to create a place once a year, this beautiful event. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh my gosh, so much joy. Like you, I really like people. And I find them they're just my juice. And I like to be with people in real life. And I like to introduce people, which you probably already realized. Like it just,
What?
the,
No way.
I know, crazy town. I like to connect people and I like to see ripples of moments of connection. And that's really what we've been able to do. So this will only be year 2 in March. We'll have our second event. I hope we have many, many more. I hope this is something that way outlasts me. But what we've done is we've created a day called Uplifters Live that brings together our extraordinary guests with our extraordinary audience of uplifters for a day of connection, celebration, and mutual support. And so it is a day where we can deepen our sense of connection, where we can celebrate the value and power of warmth over cool, right? Like, doesn't so much of the world fetishize cool?
Yes.
And like, I
Yes.
don't want more cool.
No.
I want more warmth and I want more honesty and more vulnerability and I want more deep connection and I want more real. And I think most
Yes.
of us do.
Yeah.
And so we just create a day together where
Love
that is the version of ourselves that we choose to walk into the room is. Because it feels like a brave space where we
Mhm.
can safely be honest and
Yeah.
true and open. And the connections that come from that day are like nothing I ever could have dreamed. And these women leave with a greater knowing about themselves and each other, with deep friendships, fired up to go do bigger, braver work in the world. And I
It's
so hope you'll join us in March because it's going to be
I will be
amazing.
there. I will be there. So I
Yay.
mean, I as soon as we talked the last time, I looked it up and I was like, "Oh yes, I am going." I am so excited. I think it just, it we all need a place like that where, you know, if just for a day we can come and be surrounded by, people who are inspiring, who are, you know, perhaps like-minded, um, who are interested and interesting,
Hmm.
and just the opportunity. And I think this kind of works to other things that you do as well, that focus on taking care of ourselves, and not just in that like surface sense, but of that like deep, deep self-care.
Yes.
And I think most of us are pretty good at the high level, like I ran and got a manicure today. Yes. Like, and not, I mean,
It's
I
great.
am a huge fan, love my manicures, and that deeper, like, oh, that's where the warmth comes from. Right.
Yes.
So I wonder
Yes.
if you could talk about that a little bit, because we were talking about that before we started recording, and there's some good stuff in there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So many thoughts on this. I love that you bring up the manicure, and it is a really sweet moment of self care for many people. But it's occasional.
Mhm.
Maybe it's every couple of weeks. But I believe that the most vital self care happens many times every day,
Mhm.
and that it is a moment by moment practice. And it really influences how we show up in every part of our lives. And so I talk about it a lot as MET mastery. And so MET stands for meaning, energy, and time, right? And when we are able to reclaim our own sense of meaning, our energy, and our time, we have a greater sense of fulfillment and joy and a greater ability to sustain the good work we want to do in the world. We've probably all felt a sense of exhaustion and overgiving at times in our lives. And certainly the women I talk to experience this frequently. And it's something I've experienced in my own life because I like to help. I like to be good. I like to be useful. And yet, I think for so many of us, we are so driven by that sense of usefulness and goodness that the person we end up draining ourselves is this empties the source, right? And so I use the word met because, well, I worked in healthcare for a lot of years in wellness. MET in science stands for metabolic equivalent of task. And so it's a fancy way of measuring how much energy you're burning when you're doing anything. And for many uplifters, we're burning meds without replenishing them. And so what I really help people to do is to replenish those meds, to, as I said, reclaim their meaning, their energy, and time. And it makes so much sense, right? Like I heard 𝗵𝐿𝐴𝐫𝐿𝗶 say yesterday that the greatest harm she's done in her life was the result of not taking care of herself. And I think that's true for most of us. And I think we've probably all felt it, no matter how good our intentions are. We have those moments of slippage where it's like you're snarky or unforgiving with the people you love most, or find yourself having an outsized reaction to something that's out of sync with what you really feel and believe. Well, I believe that's because we're depleted.
Yes.
We're tired.
Yes.
And I see those slippages, as I call them, I see those as evidence and like a little nudge for our lives, and like the kind that the sooner we recognize it, the better off we are, that say, oh, hey, Aransas, I think maybe you aren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And this happened this week with my daughter. I led an uplifters retreat a couple of weeks ago, and it was amazing. But I really poured my body and soul into it. And then because we're in the midst of moving, and I host a podcast, and I've got 2 kids and a husband and a dog, and my mom lives here, and like all this stuff going on, I just sort of rolled back into the everyday without taking a minute to say, okay, what do I need? How am I? And I started to notice, like, my daughter asked me for help with her Halloween costume. And it was like, I did the one thing and I was like, okay, yay. I feel so good. I had a goodwill miracle and found exactly what I wanted for the Halloween costume. But then she asked me for one more thing. And I don't know about you, but there's like that one more thing that's like a trigger for me where it's like, oh, I'm not done. I got to show up for another person in another way. And I didn't like, my response wasn't, like earth shattering. She probably won't remember it, but she felt it and I felt it. Right. And it was something to the effect of like, oh, I don't know. I'll get to that later. Right. Like that's not very hurtful in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
But we both knew that I was not coming from a place of abundance. I wasn't coming from a place of meaning and energy. And I felt like somebody was trying to steal my time. And I was feeling tapped out. And so now I recognize those things before I get shitty, which I've certainly done plenty of times in my life.
Oh,
and those are my signs, right? Little things like that I'm like, oh, girl, you got to take care of you, or you're not going to like who you are in the world. And so it really comes down to a few key practices. Number one, it's real self-care, right? And it's showing up for yourself with as much integrity as you show up for everyone else. And I talk about it as like really putting yourself at the center, not to be self-centered, but to center your needs.
Right.
And to recognize them, right? And giving yourselves tiny daily luxuries. I call them TDLs, and sometimes I call them like your bliss list, but it's actively like I teach women to make a list of things that feel really good, right? Whether it's helping you stress detox, whether it's just helping you relax, whether it's helping you be honest with yourself, explore your own creativity. But these are ultimately their energy boosters
Yeah.
that counteract the energy drain of all that we can be putting out if we aren't restoring. The other thing I try to help people do is just understand themselves and really practice self-awareness as a part of a daily life, whether it's through little rituals that you practice day in, day out, whether it's your mindset, which is something we explore so much in the podcast. Like, what is the mindset of these women? How do some women seem to have more time and energy than other women? And I really think it is through understanding their own needs and learning how to show up for them. And then the last piece of this is, I think, for most women, the hardest, but it's self-expression. And it's honestly saying what we need. And it's, in my case, and this story I just shared, it was saying to my daughter, "Ooh, I don't feel great about the way I just responded to you. And I think it means that I need to go take some time for me." Because I don't want her thinking that was about her, because it wasn't. She asked really nicely. She was being true to our agreement that I was going to help her with her Halloween costume.
Right.
But if I'm not self-expressed, I find I get more seepage and leakage.
I love that.
And so it really is, as you see, like, none of these are things that, like, I can take care of once a week or once every 2 weeks, or it is moment by moment. So it really is a way of being versus anything that we do.
I love that distinction. I love that so much, because it's about the awareness and the ability to be really present and stay present. I think especially when we get overwhelmed or stressed, it's very easy to go into that like self-protective like mode where you can be like put some distance or some buffer or some whatever it is and whatever you want to call it, but and it's a practice of being able to get to that place. Like, this is not something that happens overnight. This is something that it's little, every time you do it 1,000 times a day, you become more aware and you become more gentle with yourself. You give yourself more grace, and you're able to express it, put words with it, because I think that's a difficult thing to be able to say kind of in the moment, like recognize, oh, that was so not about you. I'm so sorry. I'm tapped out. I'm exhausted. I'm fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
I need a minute. And take that minute. It's such a powerful and my goodness, it is the best gift you can give yourself and all the people around you. But, for sure, yourself, because then you do, the result is that you can show up the way you want to show up in the world. And you don't hit that wall.
Right.
So I had that a few weeks ago. I did a in-person talk out in California, and it was a lot. It was kind of a lot of different pieces that were firsts for me, and they were all at once. And it was just a lot. And in San Francisco is a lot. And so when I got back, it was just a whirlwind trip, and I got back and I was like, I just need a couple days. Like, I literally like cleared my calendar and I was like, I just need to be able to do the things that feel good for me, whether it was just, writing, like I did all these different things, but I was like, this is how I need to show up for myself right now. And then I can kind of, right.
Yes.
But it was, kind of to your point, like knowing what it is for you in those different moments, because different times ask for different types of self-care, but just getting to know yourself well enough to know.
Yeah, because we are high capacity women. And we know in a pinch, well, we could keep going.
Oh, Absolutely. But that doesn't mean we should.
Correct. Doesn't mean it's going to be the best long-term strategy.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think we were talking about this the other day, the capacity to hold, this is true, this is also
Mm,
true, and this is also true. Yes, that is amazing and does take a lot of work to be able to get to that place. And it doesn't mean that we need to do it every day, right?
right.
So, um, I think that's fantastic work. So you do this work with private clients,
I
correct?
do. I do. I work with private clients. I work with a lot of corporate clients, bringing this into women's ERGs, employee resource groups,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
help high impact, high capacity women at companies. And it's like such a gift
Oh,
when
yeah.
companies have the wisdom to invest in their women leaders in this way.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, I've done it with mixed teams too. Because as much as I talk about women, I watch the same thing happen for my husband. I
Yes.
just happen to be a woman who was
Right.
raised by a bunch of strong women who's raising strong women. And so I feel a real calling to support
Mhm.
women, and yet it happens to all of us.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, I have a video version of it where people can take the course. Um, and I do a small group and individual coaching on mastery. And then, like I said, in
Excellent.
companies. So it's really about reaching as many people as we can
Yeah. Yeah.
to help us all learn real self care. I spent 20 years at Weight Watchers,
Yeah.
and I watched over and over again how these women, especially again, came in because they were feeling really bad in their lives.
Mhm.
And they would come in with a weight goal. And the vast majority did not see success. And so often when you would talk to them about it, they'd say, well, uh, and I'm paraphrasing 20 years of research here, they would say, I have trouble showing up for myself as well as I show up for everyone else.
Mhm. Yep.
And those who did were transformed,
Yeah.
not because their bodies were smaller, but because A, they felt a greater sense of freedom in the world, and B, they learned how, paradoxically, to take up more space,
Mhm.
to self advocate.
Yes.
And so, you know, 25 years now, I guess, into this career and into this work, for me, it's very clear that weight is a symptom for many
Oh, yeah.
people of a challenge that plagues so many of us well beyond any other symptom. And it
Mhm.
is a lack of awareness and practice in deep self care.
Mhm. Yes. That disconnection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother conversation. Just listen to the episode that we did on uplifters because we talk a lot about that disconnection.
Yes.
I'll plug that
Yes.
episode right now.
Yay.
Um,
Thank you.
of course. So I speaking of strong women and you raising strong women, I wonder if we could I'm watching our time really closely, but I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit because we realized when we started talking that we had more in common than we realized even to begin with. And I'd
Yeah.
love for you to share a little bit about your daughters and about just some of your approaches to parenting. And you already have a little bit, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more because I think that people can really connect with that.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that really excited me about your work is that you are creating space for people to talk about parenting queer children, but it's really about parenting with acceptance.
Mhm.
And for us, I was raised with my grandmother, and it's been, she talks about how her father, this sort of foundational mindset of parenting was you raise children like you raise horses. And your job is to, and this is no joke. It sounds so like, what? But this was the prevailing narrative. Your job is to break their spirits and teach them to conform and follow the rules and play within the lines.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother then was exposed to another parenting style, which is how she raised me, which is that your children should be treated like guests in your home. And right, it makes sense, right? From an evolutionary standpoint.
Yes.
And so having been raised like a broken spirited horse, she wanted to just lavish her children and let them be deeply cared for. I mean, we could go into all the socioeconomic pieces of this because she also was raised during the Great Depression and as a migrant farmer. And, and so
Yeah. Oh my
she
goodness.
really wanted to give her
Yes.
children every opportunity. And so for us, as we sort of listen to all these narratives coming generationally to us, but also to those that were popular in our community at the time, for us, the only reasonable answer was to be responsive to our children. And we've gotten a lot of practice with that. Our
Mm-hmm.
children in some ways have been super lucky. They have two parents who deeply love each other and them.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a stable home environment. Their foundational needs have been met. They've been given a lot of love intergenerationally. And so they've been really, really lucky.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, they have really had to face their share of challenges. One of my daughters, and I speak about this with permission from both girls, in fact, to share these stories. But I think they are important to share because I think they're stories that we don't talk enough about, and therefore don't have awareness of. Right. So,
Yep.
so we can't
Absolutely.
consider how we might handle them. But our older daughter, when she was 12, participated in an after school program, and she was kind of a quiet, shy kid, didn't have a lot of friends. And she was like really artsy. And so she got this karate teacher, and we thought, wow, she's getting all this praise from this karate teacher. Sometimes she'd come home and she'd say these sort of weird things, and we'd be like, that dude's a weirdo, but cool. She's getting praised for being good at karate. And, she told us one day was like, oh, you can't trust your teachers. Teachers are just in it for the money. We were like, that's insane. But whatever.
Yeah.
And another day she came home and she was like, weirdest thing happened in karate. A kid kicked me, and then the teacher hit him so hard that he knocked him down. And she was like, it was cool that he wanted to stand up for me, but doesn't that seem strange for a teacher to hit a student? And I was like, yeah,
I love
that's
that.
really weird. But still, we're like, he's a teacher. Teachers are good. Good things happen at school. And our artsy, shy kid is good at karate. And then the pandemic happened, and we went to online learning. And one day she said, yeah, it's so weird. My karate teacher said, you guys don't care about me because you asked me to get a vaccine. And we were like, that's insane. Let's talk about it. And we did. And she was like, yeah, I agree. That's weird, but okay. Yay, karate. And then she told us one day, oh yeah, karate has been slowing down. Lots of kids aren't doing after school lessons on Zoom. But my karate teacher asked me if I'd meet with him and keep going. And I was like, sure. Because we were so naive. We didn't recognize what probably you've already picked up on through these examples. This guy was grooming our kid. He was systemically alienating her from every other trusted adult.
Yeah.
It was ineffective because she was honest and trusted us enough to come to us with these stories. And so he wasn't able to separate her from other trusted adults to the degree that he was actively trying to do so. But we had no idea what he was doing. And we didn't see it because nobody's talking about this stuff. I mean, I
Right.
literally have not heard these stories
No.
because I haven't talked about them either. And
Right.
this is, in fact, the first time I'm sharing this story because it was only recently that my daughter and I agreed at her urging that the story needed to be shared. And it happened several years ago, and she feels ready to talk about it, and she wants me to talk about it. And what he did that finally opened our eyes is he asked her one day on Zoom, in this private Zoom karate lesson, to play a game with him that involved taking off their clothes. And she was a shy little girl, and she was uncomfortable. And so he asked her to follow these commands that involved him or her taking off her clothes. She, in her shyness, did it very slowly and ultimately showed none of her body parts, but did unbutton her pants and then shoved her shirt in them to cover her tummy. But he asked her to give him certain commands, and he told her what to say to him, and ultimately he took off his clothes. And it was at that point that she realized she was out of her depth. And she told him, she used one of the commands to ask him to turn around. And as he turned around, she muted her camera or muted her audio and turned off her camera. And she said, she opened her door. I happened to be working inches away from her at that moment because we were collaborating on a really fun project. And she said, "Mommy, I don't know what to do." And it was one of those moments, like in the movie, where all of the little pieces that didn't add up in any way, that were just like weird individually,
Right.
but not anything beyond that instance, they all came together. And I saw in that moment exactly what was happening because I saw her little pants unbuttoned and I knew she was in karate. And I walked in and I saw him on Zoom without his clothes on. And it was not prosecutable because he hadn't actually shown his penis. He'd taken off his shirt. He turned his pants into underwear. He has been removed from New York City schools and is no longer able to teach. But despite extraordinary efforts from our family and other experts and attorneys and many, many, many others in the legal field who were and the police forces who were incredibly empathic and incredibly supportive and incredibly kind to us, it wasn't prosecutable. And so that is the sad part of the story.
Yeah.
That my daughter experienced this, that we don't have systems in place to protect kids in this way yet. But what I am proudest of, and was that the longest answer to a simple question you've ever asked?
No, it was a very important answer to a very, I knew what I was asking. So I wanted this answer. I wanted you to share as much as you
what
feel
I was
comfortable
proudest
sharing.
of is in that moment, I said to Savannah instantly, "Honey, I am so proud of you. You are so brave."
Yes.
And I didn't blame her. And I didn't think for a second about incriminating her in any way or placing any of the responsibility on her. But even more than that, I am proud that we set the stage for our daughter to immediately come to us when she didn't know what to do.
Yes.
And this is a kid who is independent, who takes the subway systems all day, every day on her own, who navigates extraordinary complexities in work and life because of her own health challenges, because of the world we live in, because of the city we live in.
Yeah.
And yet she knew that when she didn't know, that she could trust us to advocate for her. And it felt like the most important parenting decision I've ever made. To be able to say to my kid, I love you. I support you. I am here for you. And it's why I think when our own daughter, our other daughter, our younger daughter, decided that she was ready to come out of the closet. It's such an antiquated term. I don't know how I feel about saying.
I love that you
She
used the whole
decided
thing,
to.
though. That was good.
She decided to acknowledge publicly her lesbianism.
Exactly. Yes.
Which, like, we didn't live in a world. We live in New York City. Like, there were always trans kids in class. There were always gay kids in class. Look at this. We always watched gay movies that centered gay characters. Like, so there wasn't a sense of, I need to hide this in our family or in our home or in our city, for that matter. Hiding would have felt like the anomaly and the unusual thing. So it wasn't that, but it felt like she was safe to trust us with her truth.
Yes.
And our kids are, they're newly 14 and 16, and they're going to face so many more complex decisions, and they're going to face so many other challenges. And so for me, it has all just been this real validation to stay the course with creating a worthiness of trust.
Yes.
Because my kids are going to do stupid stuff. They're going to make decisions that harm their immediate best interest because they're human beings and we all do it.
Right.
And I want them to be independent and courageous. And I want them to know they have a safe place to land.
Absolutely.
And that's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so moved by this story, and I think it is such an important story to share. So thank you for trusting me with the space to share. And it is very important for all of us to really take time to deeply consider that story, because there are a lot of pieces to it. And like you said, you, without even really realizing it, you had already created a space. Right? So I think that is a very key place or piece of this, to consider the space that we're creating. And I think sometimes we overthink it in so many ways of maybe perhaps material aspects of the space, or kind of the shoulds coming down from, whether it's those who have gone before us or books that we are reading. And ultimately what it comes, you have hit this so spot on, is that it's providing this brave space for them to be who they are, fully, authentically, vulnerably who they are. Know that it is a safe place to make mistakes. Know that we all make mistakes, right? That this is something that we talk about, right? That there isn't any kind of expectation for, a should. And that we are 1,000% trustworthy. That no matter what is said, we hold that space. That's our job.
Yeah.
And so thank you. Thank you for sharing that, for modeling that, and And none of us are going to do it perfectly, but I think it is just so beautiful. And um, gosh, those are lucky girls
I'm a
and
lucky, lucky mom.
brave girls. And just thank them for allowing that to be shared, because that is important work. And that's just one more way of creating a ripple. So bravo.
Thank you.
Worse.
Here's to always finding pain in our purpose in our pain.
Purpose in our pain.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. And sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
And sharing it, if possible,
Mm-hmm.
with such vulnerability. So, thank you. I'm so grateful that you have been here with me today. Is there anything else that you would like to share? I will share every way to reach you in the show notes. But is there anything else that you would like to share in addition to that?
Oh my gosh. Only that I think these women that I've had the conversations with on the Uplifters have given us unequivocal truths or unequivocal evidence. Is unequivocal the word I want? Like indisputable. Let's go with indisputable.
I like that. Yeah.
Indisputable evidence that we can find purpose in pain.
Oh, yeah.
And that we are better prepared to create that purpose than we have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so for any of us who are feeling lost or alone, I would just challenge you to find the courage to be honest
Mm-hmm.
and to use it as a jumping off point for connection with others, because there are so many people who will understand where you've been and who will want to learn alongside you.
Yes. Yes. It's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.